I'm Dion Cornett with Reachforce. It's my pleasure this afternoon to be with the research team from Serious Decisions. So to my right is John Donnellan, Research Director, Ross Graber, and Jeff Clark. This afternoon we'll be talking a little bit about 2018 planning assumptions, and maybe start with you, John. Exciting year ahead of us. What are the key things people should be focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. This is planning season, isn't it, for companies that are on the calendar year for their fiscal year. This is the heart of planning season, and there are a few planning assumptions that I think we should consider going into 2018. Certainly the new GDPR regulations are big ones. The shift to an audience-centric standpoint for marketing as opposed to product-centric. And then a lot of organizations are starting to move towards agile marketing. So the agile concepts that we have in product development are starting to move into marketing.
Tell me a little bit more about GDPR, not just what the acronym means, but what does it really mean to a company?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So first of all, the acronym is General Data Protection Regulations, and they are new laws that are being enacted in the European Union, and it applies to contacts that you may have that are European Union citizens. And I'm glad you've heard of it, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because we're finding a lot of our clients and a lot of organizations in North America have a little bit of a blind spot for it, and there are fairly strict regulations around what you can do with the data for contacts that live in the EU. So first of all, you need their explicit permission to be able to market to them. You also need that explicit permission just to be able to store their data. So if you never send them an email, you still need that permission. And there are a lot of other rules in there, but one of the other big ones is if you, for example, say, hey, I want you to get rid of my contact record, I want you to get rid of all record of my information, my personally identifiable information, I need to have a process in place, and I need to be able to document the procedures for getting rid of your information. The regulations are actually in effect right now, but they're going to start being enforced in May of 2018. So companies have a little bit of a runway to get ready for it, but not as much as you might think, because there's a lot to do to get ready.
You know, we've been abiding by stricter privacy rules in some countries like Germany for years. Are these markedly different than what we're already complying with?
So it is a little bit different. It's wider in scope, so now it's all of the European Union instead of just Germany. And you know, we're seeing that organizations are taking a couple of different approaches. Either they will adopt that conservative approach for all of their contacts, so no matter where they are in the world, they'll adopt that same strict policy to be sure that they get that permission from the contact before storing their information. And some of them are still doing it on a country-by-country basis. So they feel like in North America, for example, where the rules are a little bit more lax, they don't want to handcuff their marketers to limiting the number of contacts that they have. So they'll put data privacy and permission systems in place so that they can adapt on a country-by-country basis.
Your work with clients, do you feel people are pretty up to speed already, given it's been rolled out for years, or is there still a lot of work to be done in general?
Yeah, there's a lot of companies have blind spots. You know, like I mentioned before, especially the North American ones. We just had our summit in Europe, and we were speaking to clients over there. They're much more aware of what's going on, and they're ramping much faster. I think part of the problem can be when we have, you know, there's the little outlet for the North American headquartered-based company, and then they have a regional division in London, and they're trying to raise their hand saying, hey, this is a big deal, this is a big deal, and folks at corporate back in the US aren't really listening too well. So they're getting there, the word's getting out. We're certainly trying to drive a lot of advocacy around it, and we can help our clients help get ready for it. But I would say there's still a lot of awareness and education to be had.
Well, thank you very much for the explanation. It sounds like a very comprehensive effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds scary, but it's actually a great opportunity, like I said, to be a better marketer.
So,
yeah.
Ross, as John was going through some of the top trends, he brought this concept of audience centricity. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing is that marketing organizations are doing even more and more to be specific about whose attention they're trying to capture. So it's not enough just to say we're going after the oil and gas industry or we're going after the marketing department. The organizations are defining who it is that they're targeting with a high level of precision, not only looking at things like industry and company size, but also job roles and how those job roles relate to other job roles within an organization. So companies start to get a picture of who's involved in decision making when we're selling to them. So because we're doing that, because marketing organizations are being really precise about who they're going after, they feel, or the reason why they're doing this is because it's going to give them the ability to capture the attention of their buyers and be really precise in how we message them and how we talk about the value that our company can create for different groups. Now, what that does for us, though, is it puts a whole new load of responsibility on marketing operations teams and being able to do a better job helping the business understand different audiences in our data and also understand our performance with those different audiences. Because really, the more we know about the people that we're targeting and the things that they care about, the better of a job we can do at capturing their attention and hopefully engaging them in sales cycles.
No, that seems so intuitive, but I will concede hard to do when you're actually running a company, right? The natural inclination is to be very product-centric. This is what we're building. Here's who we think is going to consume it. And so how do you start this shift from sort of a product-centric mind frame into an audience-centric one?
So much of this starts at companies where they're realizing that they're running into inhibitors to growth. So because there are a lot of companies that start out with a great product idea and they can see gangbuster success selling just that product for years and years. But what we see happens is as your product portfolios start to grow and sometimes as growth of your business begins to slow, you need, as an organization, to do a better job capturing the attention of your buyers. And it's really an imperative. So if we're going to meet our growth objectives, we've got to start being able to relate to our buyers in a different way. So that's why organizations are starting to do that. The how is a little bit tougher, but the way we look at it is how begins with defining who the different audiences that you could be focusing on are, and doing that with a pretty high level of precision. Because if we can agree on who our audiences are going to be based on our best opportunities, that's going to put us in a position where we can learn a whole lot more about our audiences. And really, the more we know, the better we're going to do at tailoring our messaging towards them and making sure that we're delivering to those audiences things that are meaningful to them, as opposed to things that might be meaningful to us, like how great our products are, or how much they cost, or how fast they let you go.
Do you see companies as they go through this process potentially shifting their strategy? So at Reachforce, we have a somewhat bifurcated market, right? We sell to some big Fortune 100 companies, the Dow Jones, the GEs, the American Expresses, but then we also serve a large number of startups who want to be aggressive. As we go through audience-centric planning and we do the segmentation, might that shift us one direction or the other? Do you see people change strategy based upon
it
a rollout?
Absolutely should shift your direction, because what this is fundamentally about is placing smart bets into the areas where you think there's the greatest opportunity to win. One of the places where companies get in trouble is they spread around their resources and try and do a little bit of everything and try and make sure that their messages are just good enough to capture really broad attention. Audience centricity is really going at this from a different perspective. It's saying we're going to not focus on certain parts of the market that even maybe we made money in last year, because we believe that by honing our focus in on some high priority segments, we can get deeper embedded with those buyers and be more successful and more profitable. It's really about being more precise.
So, John, when you're talking about the major themes, one of the ones that really resonate with me is this concept of agile marketing. Yeah. So, Reachforce is a SaaS company, and we love agile engineering, right? So, continuous integration, continuous delivery, the ability to roll out partial changes to a subset of customers, test that out. These concepts work from an engineering perspective, and so at the summit here at Tech Exchange, hearing about the potential for applying these concepts to marketing, it just resonates.
Yep.
And so, Jeff, I don't know if you can maybe go into a little bit of detail around how do I take, again, a concept that works well in the engineering domain and apply that to a marketing domain?
Yeah, well, it's certainly possible, because about 5 years ago, I think a lot of companies that were being successful in making the transition into product development perspective to Agile, they were looking at their marketing departments and saying, well, why can't you do the same thing? So just as you expressed it. So I think over that time, we've seen areas where it really is helpful for marketing to become more efficient and effective by taking that agile approach. So, areas where there's kind of like rapid iteration on developing the programs or developing content, and where there's kind of a low risk of failure, we want to try things out and make sure it's what's successful, that it absolutely works. And so we've seen in areas like in campaign execution or in website, development and working on how to improve the behavior and the activity that's on the website, or even in content development. So you get teams that are working together and they're trying to test stuff and they're trying to measure what the success of that is, and then take that back, into the process and say, well, how are we going to change what we do from a program and tactic mix? How are we going to change what we do from a content mix? How do we change what we do in terms of we set up the web experience to make it more effective?
Yeah, again, it's one of these things that seems intuitive. The smartest marketing companies will take this approach. How far along do you think we are in this development? You mentioned some companies were doing this 5 years ago. Is it now mainstream today, or is there still?
No, I would say it's not mainstream, but there's some large organizations that we deal with that are actively making this transition to using Agile. And again, it's not necessarily applicable in every aspect of marketing. I mean, there's still in marketing where you got to set strategic bets. And some of the, like what Ross was talking about, this audience or product audience transformation, or in how you're handling data. There's some things where you need to set strategies down that are going to work over the long term. And so Agile is where you can work within these strategies to actually refine the way you execute.
And of course, part of the iteration you do within a engineering context is very database, right? I've rolled out a particular feature. What's the insight I gather from that? What actions do I take it on that? Yeah. What role does data have in a marketing strategy?
Well, I mean, there's, I think, certainly a couple aspects. So one is you've got to be able to, you're testing and you're seeing what the results are, right? So you've got to have the data on what the results are. And if you can't get that on a regular basis, since, the idea of Agile is the teams work in these 2-week sprints, so they got to be able to test things and then see the results right away, right? So from a reporting perspective, they've got to have access to the data. But then I think they also have to have access to the data to help them understand, as they go into developing the programs or whatever, exactly who are they executing to? Do we have the information we need to actually address that audience and do it in a proper way?
Well, thank you all for participating in this today. It's been a pleasure to be at Tech Exchange the last few days. Very beneficial, and look forward to future meetings.
Thank you.
Thanks.